you have seen the reports, you've seen the IMF report so far.
Yes.
So the first thing we want to know is the IMF report on Nigeria showing the realities on the ground in Nigeria?
I think so far it is, because we are supposed to be growing. The economy is supposed to be growing. But if you look at what is happening now, we were projected to grow at about 2.1%. And they've said we are going to grow at about, the projected growth will now reduce to 1.9%.
Yes.
If you look at the indices, the oil output has reduced. So obviously, if oil output has reduced, then obviously that is our main source of revenue, so growth will reduce as well. Agricultural production has also reduced. Yeah. If you look at recently, food prices are high due to inflation. And what is causing that is because of the farmers' herdsmen clashes. So that is affecting agricultural output. Farmers can't really go out to farm. And as such, the little they have that they are pushing into the market, the prices of that will definitely increase. So these two indices are currently affecting the growth of Nigeria. And obviously, we can also look at, there are no provisions being made, even though we notice that there's an increase in oil price to about $80 per barrel. Now, there's no provision being made to support other sectors like manufacturing, agriculture, or any other sector. There's no special fund being made to support those sectors. And as such, the forecast for growth will be limited and will not increase in the interim.
All right, Aliyu, let's try and look at the reports. The IMF has a report, and that's not in tandem with what Forbes is saying. Forbes is actually saying that Nigeria is the best economy 2018 with about $172 billion. How do we, just oppose both, looking at what IMF is saying and what Forbes is saying? For Forbes, Nigeria there's nothing to really worry about, so to say.
Well, if you look at IMF is the International Monetary Fund, okay, and it's an organization just like the World Bank, and they have a lot of economists working for them. That is their profession. That is what they do. They go around studying economies and provide solutions for economic recovery. Forbes is not really their line. Forbes is more of a business line in terms of business analyst and financial analyst with Forbes magazines and all that. So in terms of credibility and in terms of looking at the source, I think IMF is what we should be looking at. And if you look at Nigeria, for example, you notice that given what is going on, if you go around and look, it's not hidden. You can tell that we reported an increase of inflation from 14% to 11.23%. That shows that food prices are increasing. And obviously, food prices are increasing. There's a reason for that. And if you look at our oil production is also reducing. And if these are the indices that IMF is using to make the prediction, then I believe that is accurate. On the larger context, Nigerian economy is one of the largest, or is probably the largest in Africa right now. Yes. It is true. But being large doesn't mean the economy is doing well. You can be very large, but you are facing economic problems. So let's be able to distinguish between the two. While Nigerian economy is very large, the economic problems taking place in the economy, and the economy is not growing as it should grow.
Okay, so we could liken this to the GDP rebasing that was done that made Nigeria, overtake other African countries, even though despite the rebasing, things were not as working well, so to say.
Absolutely. If you look at Nigeria, for example, we have the largest economy. You look at South Africa. South Africa has... In terms
of activities now, you mean?
Yeah, South Africa has the second largest economy. But if you look at Nigerian budget is about, in terms of dollars, is about $22 billion. South African budget is over $100 billion. Now, what does that tell you? We have a larger economy, but South Africa is spending more on infrastructure, is having a larger budget, is spending more than we do. That shows there are a lot of inefficiencies in the economy. And that is what is causing the problems, is staunching the growth. So that is it. We have a large economy does not mean we're doing well in other areas.
Exactly. IMF also warned Nigeria about our sovereign debt obligations and saying that our is unsustainable as compared to our revenue generations. Now it comes down to what the government have been talking about. People have been talking about diversifying the economy. But I want to ask you, how fast can we diversify the economy, and what should be done fast?
Well, diversification involves moving from one area to another, taking resources from one area to another. Now, if we are going to diversify, let the truth be told. What areas can we diversify in? That is agriculture and solid minerals. Meaning we have to take money from where we are earning money right now, which is oil, and invest in agriculture or solid minerals. Now, as you can see, last year budget of 8 trillion, we allocated less than 100 billion to agriculture. Less than 0.10%. or 0.5% of the budget is given to agriculture. Now, that is not enough, because if you want to invest in a particular area, you have to take resources from where there's abundance to invest where there is none, where you are diversifying.
Exactly.
And is garbage in, garbage out. If you invest 1 trillion naira in agriculture, you expect maybe 1 or 2 trillion out of agriculture. But if you are investing 100 billion in agriculture, what can that do? That can only do peasant farming. That can only do small-scale farming. You're not going to mechanize farming. So what does that tell us? That we are not investing enough in diversification. In the various sectors that I want to diversify in, we are not investing enough. So more needs to be done, and for us to get to where we need to get to. And if we're not earning enough revenue, we're going out, we're borrowing.
Exactly.
We're borrowing, but we are not increasing our ability to earn revenue. So in the future, how do we repay those loans? Now, this is what they call the debt trap, because money that is meant for capital projects, you'll be using that money to repay loans. And you cannot do your capital projects, you cannot do recurrent projects. And that brings economic crunch, and recession comes into place. So where we are heading to is not very good right now.
And I think the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, raised the concern about, the fact that we need to watch out for the issue of sliding into a recession. Do you think that message or that warning has been heeded?
Well, I don't see that warning being heeded too, because I just read in the newspapers yesterday that the National Assembly has approved about 2.8 billion for the federal government to borrow. Now, that is not good. We can't keep borrowing. We're going to borrow. We have to create means whereby we can generate revenue. And we're not doing that. So if we're not doing that and we're borrowing, what that means is that next year's budget, our debt service payment will be higher. And when it's higher, it leaves little provision for you to be able to do current and capital projects. So that is where the debt trap is. And that is where we can go into recession. So if we are to be serious about, moving the economy forward, we have to look for new means to generate revenue. That is what we have to do. And looking at our tax system, most economies are paying 20 to 25% of GDP. We have the largest economy in Africa, but our tax to GDP ratio is 6%. South Africa is 20 to 25%. So these are areas we have to look at if we are serious about generating revenue. Our tax system is grossly underdeveloped.
Exactly. And the IMF also warned about building buffer zones as the face of stable prices is crucial. Do you think Nigeria has built enough? Do you think we have building buffer zones in this stable oil price time?
Well, I do not think so. If you look at the foreign reserve, we're still at about 47. I don't know how much we have in the excess crude oil account. So I do not think we have enough buffer zone to last us for another year. So I think, given the recent increase in oil prices that is going on now, such increment, which is above the benchmark for the budget, should be placed in an account and funds should be put to support other sectors like manufacturing, the real sector. So if that is being done, at least you know that if any crisis come in, another sector can be productive. Do you understand? So this is what we need to do. We do not have enough buffer zone yet. We need to invest in other sectors in order for us to be able to generate revenue in case of any economic shock, which it can be created as a result of our borrowing that is taking place right now.
Well, Aliyu, I know the CBN would not agree with you totally, because they've come out to say there's no cause for concerns in terms of what we have in our reserves. But one other major issue that has come out from the IMF World Bank meeting is the issue of the fact that three major economies, talking about Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola, the growth in those countries has, you know, a lot of impact on the African continent. Currently, what can we've spoken a bit about Nigeria. Let's look at South Africa. South Africa recently also slipped into a recession. Now, looking at these big economies and the fact that they are not doing well, what is the, you know, the outlook for Africa generally?
Well, as we said, South Africa is not doing well. They, I think, went into a recession too. Technical recession, and probably came out briefly. And also Angola. Obviously, this is as a result of, you know, the oil crisis, and as a result of a reduction in world trade right now, because there's a lot of trade fights going on between China, US, and that affects the global economy. But if you're looking at Africa generally, our growth is also slow, because if you look at the projections in these countries, we are not really projecting to support other sectors. So it is expected that the norm will be the case. And if the norm is the case, there's no provision to support manufacturing, real sector, agriculture, as I was saying, then you are not expecting growth. So unless some aggressive policies is adopted by the policymakers, we don't expect any growth.
Okay, with these warnings, Africa has, you know, we've had this issue of working like in individual capacity. Shouldn't countries, or the countries, work more closely? Because we still have a challenge of, you know, trading within the African region is very low, and there have been efforts to, you know, improve that. Yet it's like we're not really getting it right. You know, there's an aspect of the language, there's currency, and all of those issues. What urgent effort, urgent steps should be taken? Because if African nations do not work together, definitely we may not move forward. Do you see these nations coming, you know, together to actually assist in building?
Even we focus on the continental Africa free trade.
Oh, well, you know, there has been talk, even looking at the airline, there's been talk of floating one airline for the whole Africa. But still, they're still discussing. The talk hasn't gone very far. And obviously, if that is done, it's going to create jobs. It's going to help expand the economy. Now, the strongest economic union we have in Africa is ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African Countries. And I think we have reached a stage of common custom union that we share passports, the ECOWAS passport. But again, we are supposed to move to the economic union, which is the stage at which the European Union is. They have the euro, which you can use within the European Union. Now, Africa is supposed to have a common currency that we can use in West Africa. Now, we haven't gotten to that stage.
Why have we not gotten to that stage?
Lack of cooperation. Hold the policymakers responsible. They are not aggressive enough. I mean, if we can take the interests of Africa at heart and we can move faster, the policymakers have to be aggressive. Maybe they don't see the benefit. You know, every country is just focusing on themselves. But if we can take giant steps and unite, like the European Union has done, and form a common currency and a bloc. We have the European ECOWAS, the West African bloc, and we also have the South African bloc, and also come in under the African Union. I think we can go a very long way into achieving economic growth, economic stability, and doing well for the continent. But at this stage, that's not where we are. So the policy, the only people who can hold responsible are the policymakers.
And Nigeria is supposed
Something needs to be done.
Nigeria is supposed to lead this process, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. We are supposed to, but how aggressive are the policymakers in pursuing these policies? How are they doing it? I mean, are we taking it? Do we know the benefits of working with Africa? I mean, you know, we are still even struggling to set up our own airline. Talk more of uniting with Africa. But I mean, you see some other African countries like Ethiopia doing well, setting up their own airline, you know, building railway and having a good railway network. And some other countries are not serious about it. So it comes down to the policymakers. More urgent steps needs to be taken.
Let's stay with the predictions from IMF. After 18 months of decline, the nation's inflation rose to 11.23% in August from 11.14. Now, IMF has predicted that Nigeria's inflation will rise to 13.5% in 2019. Do you agree with this prediction? And if you do, what are your predictions for 2019 inflation?
Well, I think the thing driving inflation, the only way we can counteract that, what is driving inflation now is one, spending. Is political. This is a political year, so there's spending. Exactly, and as you're spending, you know, more people go to buy things. That drives up inflation. Secondly, you have the herdsmen farmers clash, a major factor in Nigeria. Unless the government takes steps to address these issues, farmers are going to be very scared to come to the farm and farm. And if you don't farm, it's just the little ones that they're able to bring out that will be put out for sale. Currently, the price of potatoes, bread, and cereals have gone up. So the only way we can counteract the IMF prediction is by the government taking urgent steps to calm the security situation in the country and make it easier for farmers to be able to go out there and farm. If not, I'm sorry, we're going to go into a major inflation in 2019, possibly above the 13.7% the IMF is talking about.
Okay. So your own prediction is that we may go higher than the...
We may go higher if urgent steps are not taken to address security concerns of the farmers and headers clash. But
the government will say they are already taking enough measures.
Not enough is being done. If you're taking enough measures, why do we pick up the news and every day we hear people are being killed in Plateau State, people are being killed in Adamawa State? That is not enough. It is the primary responsibility of the government to secure its citizens and its people.
And its economy.
And its economy. And if people are afraid to come out and perform their civil duties or perform their functions, then you notice it will have a ripple effect on the economy, because people can go out to trade, people can go out to farm, and as such, there will be fear in the economy, in the country, and that is what is going on now. So the government is not doing enough to secure the people. More needs to be done. Whatever representation is being made that the government, they are not doing enough. Because if they're doing enough, we shouldn't be hearing about people dying in Adamawa. We should not be hearing about people dying in Plateau. So in my view, the government is not doing enough.
IMF also warned against the forex depletion, saying that the capital flight will continue and will last for a while. Do you agree with this?
Well, obviously, because I see a lot of foreign... in a political year, what happens is that because of the uncertainty of the next political year or the next year, you notice that a lot of foreign companies will fly out their investments abroad or their profit abroad. That is what's happening now. It is typical of this circle. So once the political situation is stabilized, maybe in 2019 we elect a president, whether it's a current or a new president, you notice that investors will begin to troop back because there's stability in the economy. So this is just a circle for this phase, for this period. That's what it is.
All right, I think what you're also trying to say is that the political actors should do more in ensuring that there's some level of the volatility is a bit reduced.
Absolutely.
All right, now let's also touch on the issue of the trade war, you know, that is brewing or is already ongoing with the United States and China. For Nigeria now, we want to look at, you know, how these will affect us, because the IMF, from the IMF meeting also, it has they've come out to say that this war may actually increase poverty in the world.
Oh yes, as you can see, trade, what does trade do? Trade makes people to exchange goods and services, and that creates wealth. How is wealth created? By producing, by demand and production. Now, if you're now stopping trade, which is what the United States is doing to China now, there's a major trade war going on. United States is imposing about $200 billion worth of tariff on China, and China is responding. And as such, there's a trade war. So that is going to stifle trade, going to stifle production. And obviously, that is going to reduce income. And that can only increase poverty. Exactly. That's what it does. And obviously, this will affect other countries. So trade war with the between United States and China is not healthy for the world economy.
How does